Good morning, everybody. It's a Sunday morning, and this is Stuff I Find Interesting. This is the last part of episode 11, so it's part 3 of 3. And this is the conspiracy portion, which was so big that I had to bust it out and do it separately from all the rest of the stuff. So, without further ado, let's get going. I'm going to make myself small so as not to be offensive. Now, the other day, cruising around the internet, China Illustrata. Oh, that's interesting. Let's look at this. Alright, we got two guys holding a map. Looks like China. Probably an old map. Oh, we have an interesting looking turtle. Dragon. That's interesting. We've got some language stuff. Alright, well, let's see what this is about. Let's look into this. China Illustrata is the 1667 published book written by the Jesuit oh God, I've practiced his name like 25 times, I swear to you. Athanasius Kircher, that compiles the 17th century European knowledge on the Chinese Empire and its neighboring countries. So, interestingly, he never went to China. He wrote a book on China and he had never been to China. So I thought, like, wow, there's got to be a story in there, right? Plus the fact that he's a Jesuit. Not that I know anything about Jesuits, but I've spent enough time on conspiracy websites to hear people go, Jesuit, Jesuit, Jesuit. So I'm assuming there's something there, because where there's smoke, there's fire. And before we go into the topic, my name is Laura. I'm from New York. I find lots of stuff interesting. I like to share interesting stuff. The vibe I'm going for is you just sat down on the bus, you're on your way to work, and some crazy random person, me, comes up to you and starts telling you about all kinds of random interesting stuff for like 10-15 minutes, and you're like, wow, and you're really interested. And then you get off the bus and you have new thoughts and new ideas and you're thinking new things, and the whole trajectory of your day is maybe just a little bit better. That's really the whole idea here, right? Make things better. So I've done a lot of different things in my life. I've had many different careers. Currently I am a harmonica player. And not a true story. And I'm here to bring you Athanasius Kircher. He was a German Jesuit scholar and a polymath. He published 40 major works in the fields of religion, geology, medicine. He is compared to Leonardo da Vinci for his enormous range of interests and has been honored with the title the Master of 100 Arts. He taught more than 40 years at the Roman College, where he set up a Wunderkammer. A resurgence of interest in Kircher has occurred within the scholarly community in recent decades. He claimed to have deciphered the hieroglyphic writing of the Egyptian language. He did not, but he did make some critical discoveries that helped lead to that. Like there was a connection between the Coptic language and the hieroglyphs somehow, I guess, and he was able to crack that code. He was very fascinated with China. He was into geology, which, you know, I'm super into geology. He was dropped into a volcano to see, kind of like what was going on. He was one of the first people to observe microbes through a microscope and say, hey, there's little stuff swimming around in there. And that the plague was probably caused by an infectious microorganism, and suggested effective measures to prevent the spread of disease. He also displayed a keen interest in technology and mechanical inventions. Inventions attributed to him include a magnetic clock, various automatons, and the first megaphone. The invention of the magic lantern, which we talked about last time, is often misattributed to Kirchner. He did not actually invent the magic lantern, but he did come up with principles that probably led to that. Anyhow, at the end of his life, he kind of got sort of, dottery and just sort of, senile-ish, and wasn't really, just sort of faded away. But recently, his stuff has come back. Now, he made some really wild drawings, and I could just go on all day with some of the drawings that he did, and I just closed out that link that had some of the drawings that he did, because I'm an idiot. There we go. There's something. Oh, you know what? This isn't as interesting as I thought it was. Map of the United States. Okay, yeah, this is not that cool. Okay. So, as I was saying, this is one of his works. Now, interestingly, I have a reoccurring dream with this pattern. So, I'm not saying I'm mystical or anything, because clearly I'm not. But what if this is like a universal pattern, a universal thing that's all like imprinted on all of our brains, right? And all of us see it, but he was able to like tap into it, this sacred kind of geometry. Okay, now I'm just crazy talking. Let's go back to Athanasius. Athanasius, the man who believed in everything, in his Museum of the Miraculous, Universal, and Absurd. So this talks about him. He went into the Jesuit college. He completed his thingy at the college very quickly. Apparently he was very clumsy. And he lived through storms at sea. He had been washed down a river, escaped the plague, narrowly avoided trampling by horses, survived an accidental trip through the grinding wheel of a mill. He survived a hernia and gangrene. They don't say how he got gangrene. He was ice skating and he fell and he injured his leg and he didn't get it treated, which I can relate to because whatever. And yeah, so he had some run-ins with the Protestant soldiers. He was beaten up a few times. He made friends with the Pope. He experienced a severe earthquake that killed 10,000 people. There was a mineral that was named in his honor. He was the baby of 9 children. He kind of went around all over the place, and he was called actually to testify in Galileo's trial. And he was sympathetic to Galileo and Galileo's ideas and believed in them. But he was friends with the Pope. So he had to kind of be like, well, yeah, he's doing that stuff, but blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he kind of basically said a whole lot of nothing. Big nothing burger. So it goes on and on and on and on, and it talks about how he tried to interpret the Etruscan language, and it talks about some of the other things that he might have gotten wrong, but he discovered bioluminescence. He wrote often about fossils. He understood the process of fossilization and how to put stuff together that you found back in the earth to create, oh, hey, this was a lizard, this was a frog. He started to kind of go into alchemy a little bit, and he started to sort of go into mysticism. But you know what? He seems pretty normal. And as I was reading about him, that was my thought at this point. Yeah, invisible little worms, studying the plague. He seems pretty normal, right? Oh, here. He drew a thing of the Buddha. I mean, that's kind of cool, right? He, was into thinking of spirituality, which I can get down with. I know I said it in a previous episode that I was an atheist, and I am. But I am very spiritual. I do think there's a connection and an order to things. That being said, life is cruel. I mean, an eagle swoops down, eats a baby bunny. Like, what's that about? Like, that's not very nice, but that's life, right? So I guess I'm maybe kind of a stoic a little bit, with a splash of existentialism, with a little bit of metaphysics. I don't really know. I do think it's important to believe in something, especially other than yourself, and not declare yourself to be God of your own universe, because we are very much at the mercy and whim of the universe. So Buddha, moving on. Okay, well, let's see. What was this guy into? Let's go a little deeper. He was into the Voynich manuscript. Someone asked him to see if he could decipher it because he was known to be this really smart guy. The Voynich manuscript, you're probably familiar with it. It has some weird pages that look like this. I'm not going to show you any other pages because there's like naked people. I don't want to offend anybody. But it's written in a language that has yet to be translated, and it's unknown exactly why it exists or what it's supposed to be, but someone spent a lot of time on it. All right, well, let's go a little deeper. He drew pictures of giants. That's interesting. Okay, well, I mean, maybe giants existed at one time, right? Perhaps. It's possible. This guy is saying, no, it's not possible. He confused bones of something with something else, and He was right about a lot of things. Okay, what else we got? We got the giant, we got the Voynich. Wait a minute, what's this? Okay. Wait, I gotta think about this for a second. The cat piano. The Katzenclavier was a musical instrument made out of cats, designed by 17th century German scholar Athanasius Kircher. It consisted of a row of cage cats with different voice pitches who could be played by a keyboardist driving nails into their tails. Well, that's kind of weird, right? I'm starting to feel a little different about this guy. Let's look at the next thing. The man who knew too much. Okay, now we're starting to get out there, right? Let's make this bigger. Dragons and giants have dwelled within the earth. Musical harmony is but an echo of the harmony that exists out in the cosmos. Certain creatures, such as insects, can be spontaneously created from non-living matter. Atlantis is real and located in the North Atlantic, right in between Spain and the New World. Networks of fire and water course through the hollowed-out spaces inside the earth. Mermaid and griffins rode in Noah's Ark alongside the other pairs of animals. So, those are things that our boy here, Athanasius Kircher, put forth. And this is his map, his mythical map of Atlantis. Now, I think this is actually upside. I think you're supposed to, like, flip it, because if that's America, and that's kind of like where it would be. And it's got some more stuff about him. But it talks about how he drew this map of Atlantis, and he got it from researching. Like, he heard about it and he was like, yeah, no, that's not true. And then he started going into stuff. Like, maybe he went into the Vatican archives, right? Like, he had access to that, theoretically, if he was friends with the Pope, for God's sake. But he drew this map. It's like, oh, okay. And then he drew this thing. Oh, okay. Volcano. He was actually kind of right about the volcanoes. He was on spot about that. Let's look a little bit more about Atlantis. Now, this guy sort of debunks it and says maybe it's Greenland, maybe it's meant to be something else. This person is basically saying it's not Atlantis, but that doesn't mean there aren't any submerged cities in the world. There's lots of them. They're being found all the time, especially now with the increase in technology and what we can do now from the sky with a camera that just kind of goes over everything. Whereas in the past, like 150 years ago, you had to strap a pack on your back and go into the jungle and hack your way through with a freaking machete and look for, like just things that were very, very hard to find and covered with lots and lots of lush growth. Now you just fly over with this thing and it goes and it shows you what's there without having to put your feet on the ground and see snakes and bugs. Okay, well, our boy Kircher here, he also believed in hollow earth. So this is interesting, and this is something that that someone wrote, and I want to read it, and I'm not really sure where this person is coming from, but it's interesting. And so Kircher believed in the hollow earth. Another aspect of the hollow earth theory that I love, even though the whole idea is patently stupid, is the possibility that you could go under the earth, just slip away under the surface. Anytime I am sad or embarrassed, I have always pictured letting the earth swallow me up, less a sinkhole and more like a rupture in the fabric of reality. The plane of the ground presents an opening that only I can perceive, and I take my escape. It's like when you level up in Mario. It's like this quilt my grandmother has. It's a big pastel quilt, and it used to hang on the wall in her bedroom. Each small square is a light, modest floral motif, subtle geometric patterns. I'm not really into textiles, so I can't tell you what kind of quilt it is, what kind of quilt, what school of quilting it falls into, or anything like that. The squares loosely form a bigger, simple pattern out of their differential shade and tone. One square doesn't fit in. It is darker. This isn't a story about sacred geometry, which I suspect might be the tribal tattoo of the 21st century. This isn't some parable of the imperfect cornerstone where it turns out the strange quilt square is Jesus. Just hear me out. My grandmother speaks quietly and with purpose. She can be quite long-winded. Listening to her reminds me of reading a Kazuo Ishiguro novel where it's not unlike the very end that you see the shape of the characters. In a lifetime of being in that room, I had never really focused in on the one square. The whole quilt had this look of humility about it, like you wouldn't think to pick it apart or criticize anything about it. It was unassuming like that. So it's going on, but you can see it's very, very beautiful written, and he talks about this odd square being a rupture in the logic, and then they kind of go off into how the world is changing and how it's affecting them personally and their take on things. And it gets a little kind of astrological, right? Like here we have a horoscope randomly in there, but interestingly enough, I have no idea when this article is from, but it fits. I was like, oh. But I mean, that's kind of like what astrologists do, I guess. And my mom did professional, semi-professional astrology, so that's an interesting thing, right? Okay, so also, we're wrapping up now. Athanasius believed that the Tower of Babel reached up to the moon, and here we have the Tower of Babel. Now this picture is like, you could just kind of go through it and look, and all of this will be in the links, including the stuff that I've done already. Everything will just be all of it. So this is just, look at this, a little like yurt looking thing, and then we've got these buildings, and we've got a ship with a dragon's head. I mean, just crazy stuff, right? But he really believed that you could build a building to the moon. At least he said that you really could. I don't know in his heart whether he really believed that, of course. Okay, as we're getting to the end, who's behind the mysterious Mojave Desert microphone? There's a huge sculpture on top of the mountain in the middle of the Mojave Desert in a very remote area. And nobody really knows what it is, and nobody really knows why it's there, and it would have been very difficult to get up there. And there's not a lot of pictures here, right? You can kind of see it from here. But going back to Athanasius, he designed like this megaphone thing. So, I don't know, maybe, what do you think? Maybe he's still alive. Okay, so that's the conspiracy. Those are all the different sort of things with Athanasius, and you can look this stuff up. I'm including the book that he wrote with all of the pictures. I think it's like 638 pages. It's the link. It's to a library, so it's public. You're allowed to go there. And also a book that was written about him, Athanasius Kircher, the Man Who Knew Too Much. Now, he wrote a book called The World is Bound by Secret Knots, and I love that. I find that very moving. And there's an artist who did a show that was exactly with that title, The World is Bound in Secret Knots, because they were inspired by it. And I could see why. That's a beautiful turn of words, very evocative. It's sort of almost like mystical, like a prayer. So that's something that you can look at. And the name of this artist is Emily Jan Lemaire, I believe. But the whole thing is sort of a reference to Athanasius. Now, I'm including a speech by Terence McKenna. I'm not necessarily a fan. I'm not necessarily not a fan. I like some of the stuff that he says a lot. I like the fact that he thinks deeply. But there's a motto. Athanasius' motto is, it's in Latin, but in American English, it means, while sleeping, watch. And I like that. And it talks about, then he says, I've noticed that while going to sleep there is a barrier, a place in the process of going to sleep that is like the mercurial edge. It's a river. It's a zone of hypnagogia. And then true hallucination begins to occur. At any given moment on the planet, because of the way the planet is as a thing, some considerable percentage of human beings are asleep always, and many are awake. And so, if the world soul is made of the collective consciousness of human beings, then it is never entirely awake, it is never entirely asleep. It exists in some kind of indeterminate zone. Interesting thing to read, but I like that he talked about Kircher, and this is a thing that Kircher actually said: nothing is more beautiful than to know it all. And I can vibe with that very deeply. And I feel like I would have gotten along with this guy. I tried to find out about his personal life. Was he married? Did he have kids? I didn't find anything. I didn't look too hard, though, because I didn't want to get too caught up and go down the rabbit hole. But yeah, this is the book. If we go to thumbnail view, we can see we've got, as we get deeper into it, and it takes a minute to load because it's really big. Oh, it's like 1,000 pages. Good Lord. It's big. That's what she said. Okay. I'm mature, I swear. Anyway, you can look at every page and you can blow every page up. You can bigify it, look at it, and bug out over some of the drawings that he did. They're very cool. This is the book I was referencing. Is 480 pages. It'll be in the link, so you can look at it if you want. It's more sort of like a biography. It probably talks about his personal life. I didn't read it. And I don't know why I saved this. Is there a therapy modality that talks about some suffering being okay? I don't know why I saved that. Maybe I just had it on the screen and accidentally saved it. But yes, some suffering is okay. Too much suffering is not okay. Only you as a person know the difference. I hope everyone has a good day. That is the end of today's thing. And we're going to have another episode soon. I'm already working on it. So with that, I meant to end gracefully and I didn't.